going to be okay.
Yeah, I should be fine. I think people are forgiving this time of year. You have the sniffles there, not an issue.
Okay.
But yeah,
All right.
you were saying that Mo had talked about the gap that Albert's list fills. Could you go ahead and finish that up before we go back to your origin story there?
Yeah. So, it's interesting to think about. Albert's List kind of fulfilled two different things. Number one, the actual business gap that it fulfilled, which was, I graduated when there was that '08 recession and all of that stuff was still going on back in 2010 when finding a job was still difficult and applicant tracking systems were super young and so I was able to get my career going, and I just wanted to help other people, and I wanted to connect with other people in safe ways too, and that's where the other hilarity
Hmm.
that comes up is because Albert's List initially started as a breakup project. I was with a college sweetheart for about 6 years or so, and that ended. And I wanted to go do something else, but didn't really want to like meet people and get my heart broken. And so
Mm.
I landed upon this job search community that 10 years later is still going on and has a completely different context for me now. And it's definitely cool because there's this privilege of being able to impact the world in a really positive way and help others in the ways that you wish you could have been helped when you were first hunting for work way back in the day.
That's awesome to hear. So it's kind of interesting to see, I think, this happens quite often with many folks is your intent is one thing, and as you learned through X, finding X, whatever X is, you
Yeah.
learn so much along the way, and then you realize, well, hey, nobody's doing this. Let's have a look here. So I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, definitely an accidental business, with by almost every means. And so yeah, I don't know if I could have lucked out into this side hustle any other way.
That's something we've known each other for a few
Yeah.
years now, and something that I've always wondered, because I pride myself on my ability to lead people in leadership and this type of thing. But you have a type of leadership that we've never really talked about. And it's sort of this soft leadership where there's people that have huge amount of respect to you, that follow your lead, that do things, and you really have no real authority over how you deliver this information. But somehow it's sort of like people are like, oh, that's what, including myself. I'm like, oh, Albert needs some help. I'm going to go do this thing for Albert. Or, and I was kind of, if that's just your natural style of doing stuff, or, how did that,
Yeah,
is there a source of that?
I didn't grow up, I think, being taught or told that leadership was something that was like this unique thing that you kind of just put on the side here and go and do, right? It's just I come from, my family's just the Silicon Valley, born and raised. Both of my parents were software engineers, and from a young age they were always like, you should go and learn something technical, whatever that is. um and so and so leadership wasn't necessarily this thing. And even as a working professional now, it's a concept that I struggle with because, like, am I supposed to be standing in front of people? Am I supposed to be giving campaign speeches, right, in the vein of 2024? And really, I think, like, it's just, after a while, the way I've probably seen it, it's built up credibility with this hope that you've built a level of success, and that, I mean, I hope that if people are following me too, that they're experiencing some level of success as well. Because there's a million people you could go out there and follow and mimic their every move. And my hope for those people too is, I wonder, like, okay, am I putting out the best advice I could possibly put out there, or can I just say anything and people will go and do it? And I don't want to be that kind of person either.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so we went a little bit in a reverse order there. Could you talk about, you touched on it was a breakup project and everything, but exactly how you came about starting Albert's List, and what it's actually grown into, and give us a little background and where you are now. Because I've gotten to see it not from its very beginning, but from when it was young to now, and I just think it's an impressive story.
So it started March 5th of 2013. It was kind of a slow day at work. And I don't know, I was just on Facebook thinking, I have all these job opportunities that keep coming in from these recruiters that I'm not going to do anything with. And you know, the predecessor to Albert's List, which is kind of hilarious, was this gigantic spreadsheet that I still have in a Google Drive somewhere around here of friends and their emails. And I just share out this spreadsheet to people who are like, I need a job. And I was like, I got a bunch of names of people who do a bunch of random things. Here's a spreadsheet. Go check it out. And if you see someone you like, send them an email and tell them I sent you. And then I was like, you know, maybe there's a more scaled up way to do this, because I had started posting some of these as like Facebook status updates. And then I was like, a Facebook group. And so I started it on that afternoon. And you know, it was something that I was thinking like, hey, if this reaches 3,000 people, 5,000 people, that's cool. Maybe somebody gets a job out of it. Maybe somebody meets someone that they can network, and you end up with something interesting. And so 10 years later, we have almost 49,000 people. We do have different various Facebook chapters. So like out in Texas, like the one that Jay, you handle from time to time, New York, Southern California, and so forth. But our Bay Area chapter at 48,000 is the most active, with people posting every day, all sorts of odds and ends and questions. And not only that, over the last couple of years, I've also figured out how to try and monetize it too, because for a lot of years it was just this really cool side project where I gave away a lot of things for free because I didn't want to be one of these people on the internet that sold something and tried to scam people out of their hard-earned money. And so I kept it free for a long time because I was like, how do I do it, but do it genuinely? And you know, we've gotten to a point where we do 8-week boot camps that help people get closer to finding their opportunities. We do free, still free mock interviews that you really on camera show people how they can interview for their next job interview. And we always tell people that this is the most people you ever talk in front of, because it's likely that your next interview will be in front of 2 or 3 people instead of like 10 to 15, 20, 30. And then
just real quick, I think that that's something that is kind of missed by some of the people on the Texas site and other sites, is when you guys are doing those interview things, it's not just for interviews in the Bay Area. It's a skill set that, you know, you guys are teaching for free, that some people they pay money to learn how to make their resumes better and do interviews and everything. These are services you guys are doing. And I think that goes back to what you're saying. It's the genuine piece of it, of giving back without charging and nickel and diming people.
Yeah, because you know, these are one-off skills that I think every working professional should have some grasp of, right? So our free tier of webinars are generally these mock interviews. We also get together with an economics professor every month to talk about the state of the job market, the state of inflation, because I believe that knowledge is power. And if you can connect all the trends together and see that, for example, you know, if manufacturing is down the last 3 months, well, maybe that's why it's been tough for you to find a manufacturing job, because, you know, nothing's happening in that area, things like that.
Right.
And then we'll occasionally bring in an employment lawyer to remind you that, yes, you as a worker do have rights. And then we'll do, you know, one-offs. So for example, I've been starting to do this thing now with all these tech layoffs. I have a panel going on in February where I'm bringing in non-tech workers who work in government, who work in education, and so forth, to really show people like, look, there is a world outside of tech, and you can go work in construction if you wanted to, and here's how you go and do that. And so that's all on the free level, because you're going to find most of that information for free anyway, I think, unless you're really looking at advanced information. And so, you know, let's give the people an opportunity to come in and experience some of our content. And we build an email list, obviously, you know, on the other side, since we're talking business and marketing here. And then, you know, it really builds up to our more premium content and that type of work that we do, which is our multi-week boot camps, which really, dive deep into a particular function of job hunting, like interviewing and really diving deep into that, or our 8-week boot camp, which we have been doing now for about 3 years, where folks over 8 weeks learn about all the skills from various experts on how to interview, build their personal brand, how to execute their job hunt, how to message someone on LinkedIn and get an actual reply,
Mhm.
uh, how to check in with yourself emotionally, because the job search can be so taxing on yourself.
Mhm.
And you go through that, and you have a cohort that you go with that supports you all along the way. You can talk to them on LinkedIn every day. You can reach out to me, and you can vet about how you're getting ghosted, and we'll figure out a way around that and all those sorts of things. And then something new that we started last year that parallels our 8-week boot camp is our 5 to 6 week side hustle boot camps, because we realize, in the age of high inflation and unstable job markets, that having control of your own destiny is one of the things that's really important as American as apple pie. And
Yeah.
so being able to use all the existing things that are on the internet to build your own business. So last year we ran 2 boot camps that help people build businesses on Amazon, reselling goods. And so we graduated about 15 people from those 2 cohorts. And then this year
Have you
we're
been able to do any follow up to see if anybody, had? I mean, most people they're going to find a little bit of success and make a few dollars, and then they'll jump out after a while. Do you know if any of those people are still doing those things, or?
I think it's really early still. I think one person from the first boot camp might still be doing some
There you go.
selling with some
That's
market.
almost 10% success rate.
Yeah. Then we just graduated a cohort about a month ago, right into the holiday season. So it's a opportunity for them to figure out what they want to sell too. And so in 2024 we're going to expand this, and the very next boot camp we're doing is we're going to teach people how to resell on eBay. So go to thrift stores and
Mhm.
find interesting things and sell on eBay, and maybe make a full-time income from that. And then I want to look at other boot camp ideas as well for side hustles that include becoming a social media influencer, or becoming a consultant like yourself, Jay, and really giving people that idea that the stuff you learn from 9 to 5 can be applicable in so many different areas of your life.
Mhm.
And there's nobody on this planet that's preventing you from taking those skills and expanding upon those skills. And
Right.
all we sometimes need is that little push, because I'm a person of structure. And so I know that if I have that level of structure, I can be dangerous. And that's what I needed to do to be successful at Albert's List too, is that level of structure. And now that I have that, I feel like I can pass that philosophy on to others.
Okay.
Albert, a couple questions here. You brought up some interesting points regarding, you know, Albert's List in different cities. For example, San
Mhm.
Francisco is known for a very dynamic job market.
Yeah.
Texas may be another one. You have these different cities and access to. So, how do you see the employment landscape? I guess evolving by city, especially in recent times.
Oh gosh, that's an interesting one, right? So, the pandemic really threw a wrench into, I think, how we see work. And there are, a lot of Fortune 500 companies that are trying to wrestle that pre-pandemic mindset back. But I think for a lot of companies the large companies that get it, and the smaller companies that are definitely doing it, that remote is the future. So, people can finally move to someplace cheaper, and they can move someplace where they're closer to their family, or even have a lot of land that they can live on, and so forth. And I think that for cities, it's a chance at a different kind of renewal that they haven't experienced before. And right, so we've heard a lot about San Francisco over the past year with this doom loop narrative, and how restaurants downtown don't have the same level of traffic as they have before, and perhaps it's time to turn these commercial buildings into affordable real estate. Those are all interesting ideas that I think do work, that paired up with the right political motivation, can lead you to a type of renewal that is needed for so many of these urban cores that have decayed into where they have, with crime and dirtiness and all this other stuff. And
But I think that's a really interesting point. Is, no matter what's going on, I believe I was, in San Francisco at sort of the end of that golden age, right, where I would get off the train and I would do this beautiful walk and enjoy it.
gosh,
And it's not really the same anymore. That beautiful walk is over, and it's because of, that you named it the doom loop. It's what's going on down there. And
you and
when
I
we
were in San Francisco in the mid 2010s, where you got
Mhm.
off the train at Third and King, and you knew you were walking into something special, because in each and every one of those tall office buildings, something innovative and
Yeah.
amazing was being created. And now, I mean, you don't get me wrong. In some cases, those buildings are still doing that, but you got to make sure you don't walk over a homeless person while you're doing it now.
Yeah, and that was toward the end of, before we
Yeah,
left Northern Cal and went down to Southern Cal for a few years. That
yeah,
that was, that had started happening. I went from my beautiful, mile walk from the train station down to the offices there on South Park. And yes,
yeah,
people, that's actually a real place. It's called South Park. And I went from these beautiful walks and chatting with other professionals to dodging people that were trying to attack me, and
yeah,
not going down a political path here, but it's just crazy that
yeah,
to bring it back around to the business side, is that once your businesses start going into different directions, such as currently, with everybody going to the remote style,
yeah,
it has a huge impact. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about technology or customer service or anything. If you don't have to be in person and it can be done from anywhere, it really has changed the dynamic. And me and Mo were talking about that just several days ago. We were talking about
mhm,
how if you stay as a service centered industry, if service is your focus,
Mhm.
including with Albert's list, I'm trying to provide something of value, I don't want to, so you're serving people. And that's always been Mo's huge focus, even more so than my own. I believe I'm a servant leader, but when you get into the service side of things, that's where I think everything starts falling. And I don't mean service like the service industry, but caring about other people and what's needed. And one good side of that is a lot of companies started caring about what their employees needed and started serving their employees. But the bad part of that was now you have the collapse of the city centers where I'm
yeah,
not there. I'm not spending $25 on lunch today because I'm
yep,
eating leftover pizza out of my fridge.
Well,
right, right,
I can tell you both, gentlemen, that I know a few companies, large companies, actually beginning this year, 2024, they are returning back to the office. It went from 1 to 2 days going to the office to as needed to now it's full time. And from a perspective of a business, you got this lease that you're paying X amount for.
yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, that raises up whole other lines of questioning, right? How does productivity work? Or is it productive? Then what happens? Some folks drive, at least here in Houston, Dallas, etc. Hour plus to and from, each way to work. Uh,
yeah.
Crazy.
I think sitting in traffic is stressful, personally.
Mhm.
for sure.
I don't know. I listen to audiobooks usually when I'm sitting in traffic, so I sort of have my mental escape. I'm either listening to podcasts or audiobooks.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
So there is a trend. There is a trend. So there's going to be a dynamic there to switch. Wait a minute. Well, I was hired remotely.
mhm.
I have responsibilities now. I
mhm,
take my kids to school. I pick them up. There's other things that now have to be reconsidered.
Well, there's a decently sized mortgage company that I was doing some technology work with not too long ago. We were in the middle of the pandemic when I started with them, and the CEO, his name's Sean, and he had just really a really great leader that I got to work with Sean, and his thing was we are going to close as many branches as we can and let people work from home. And
Hmm.
his idea was they ran the financials on it and they realized if they could cut their leases and pay the penalties, that the savings over the period of the following 2 years, they were going to save hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of dollars. And the customer wasn't knowing anything different. And he wasn't measuring people like how much was your ass in the seat. That wasn't his measurement. His measurement was, what was your productivity? Did you hit your numbers? And I don't care if you hit your numbers from Bermuda or Mexico or in your living room. You hit your numbers, we're good, and everything's solid. And he did, he did try to find a way to take some of the people and move them home. It's just not possible with some of the data they're handling and sensitive
Right.
information. So they had to be in a secure location. But even with that, he said, okay, how can we downsize the size of this building? What's the ideal size of the building? And he set up like hotel offices is what he called them, where people would come in and, oh, I'm going to be in this office. I signed up for it next week. I'm going to be in that office all next week. And they supplement that by putting on some great events where everybody got together. So I agree, Mo, there's a lot of companies going that trend of, oh, it's time to come back to the office. But I think the smart leaders are like Sean and saying, what's the right solution? There's a hybrid model here that doesn't require you to sit in the traffic for 45 minutes to come
For sure.
and talk at the water cooler.
Yeah, and
For
that's
sure.
actually what a lot of people are doing, is they're literally badging in, going to the water cooler, saying hi, maybe answering a couple emails from their desk, and then after like lunch, maybe at 2:00, they're heading home to beat the traffic.
Oh, if I have engaging work, if it's engaging work, something I enjoy, I am far more productive when I work from home, because
Yeah.
I will have a cup of coffee and I will sit down before 7:00. I'm going through and I'm answering all of my emails still in my pajamas before I ever get on a call or anything. Then by the time 10:00 rolls around, I'm rolling with work. I enjoy, if it's work that it has to be engaging work. If it's awful work, you have awful bosses. You can go out there and you can find the sites that are like, keep your mouse busy. So it makes it look like you're engaged on your screen, because there's also companies that are measuring how many mouse clicks per hour,
That's
is this
for
person
real.
actually sitting there. And to me, that gets a lot like, well,
And
now you're
that's
spying on your
indicative of, I think,
employees.
the lack of trust that I think is evident in today's
That's an
world.
odd name. Do you see the name of this podcast?
Yeah, yeah.
The Trust Bucket.
Yeah, and it's like, if you hire someone to do the work that you evaluated that they were capable of doing, why can't you trust them to actually get it done?
That is a common conversation.
That's going to be a good topic, gentlemen. I think, the right tool for the right job. That is absolutely instrumental, and that's everywhere. But there are times where you have a position or a person, I should say, and multiple verticals, many different type of verticals that, quite frankly, aren't productive working home alone. They just aren't. Some folks are, I'm hearing some folks going back to the office says, this is great for my mental health.
Yeah.
Some folks are just fine, as you and I, Jay, and Albert, we're fine. Just shut my door and leave me alone. Let me knock it out.
Well, I don't know. I'm pretty social. I'm pretty good with that. 4 days a week, 3 days a week usually. But going back to Sean's setup, there was 1 day a week that you were required to be in the office. It was some in-person meetings we had to be there for. But any other days were optional. So there were some days, that, I went in 3 days that week, because I was like, my wife's traveling and my son's in school, and I'm just going to go in the office for a few hours so I can get that face-to-face interaction. So there is benefit there.
Well, Albert, speaking of that, what are you seeing? What are some trends or patterns you're observing that are, I guess, high demand, or what's happening? What are some trends that are coming across your analytical data here?
Yeah, well, 2023, I think the way I kind of look at it is, we got to look at how we got here, and then I think it's also helpful to use how we got here to understand where we're going next, right? So it's a presidential year, and that's nothing to say politically. It's just that's what it is. And it's also a year after where we just had so many layoffs, even though the economy somehow continued to grow and we remained resilient and interest rates were ridiculously high. And it was also, I think, after a year where we had this sort of transition into AI everything. And so I think one thing that we're going to start seeing in 2024, for better or for worse, is still these continued layoffs, but we're going to start seeing layoffs that start in the excuse of saying, okay, we're going to start getting rid of people because AI can do this better. And one of these biggest news pieces that came out right before the holidays was this report that Google is ready to restructure 30,000 of their workers because in their ad unit, so the people who sell advertising to businesses to promote their stuff on Google search and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to restructure and reorganize 30,000 workers because the AI that Google has developed can now sell those solutions better than humans can. And so we'll see what actually comes of that here in the next year, and what happens in the next few months, because these things always seem to come quickly once they become rumors. And we'll see how many companies decide to follow suit after that and use the same story to lay off their own people. Because this is what kind of happened here might be similar to what happened last year. Google laid off 12,000, Amazon laid off a bunch, Facebook laid off a bunch, and then all these companies just started following suit because the big guys did it. They thought that they could do it too. So I think that's the big one.
Well, I think another wave that's coming, Mo and I, we both have extensive experience in call centers, technology, customer success, customer service. I mean, decades between the two of us of that. And I think what's going to really have a heavy impact from AI are some of the third world countries, some of the places where we've outsourced a lot of the customer service, that getting on board there is fantastic. And it's a great step up, and it's a good economic engine for a lot of these smaller countries. Mm-hmm. And with AI, it can do it so much better than people. And that's just directly, if you have a good database of information, AI can take it over. It can do it in any language, and you set it, and you have a couple of people that are making sure the data is updated, and AI runs with it. And I think that you probably nailed it. AI is going to decimate a lot of markets, but they say it's going to make a lot of opportunity. Have either of you worked even on a personal level with AI?
Oh yeah.
I've definitely played around with ChatGPT in the past year.
I prefer Bard. You get live information with Bard, so I like Bard. What have you done with it, Mo?
This is the same with ChatGPT, with the CRM such as Zendesk and Freshworks that are using their Freshworks, for example, has a system called Freddy AI. It's fascinating work where they're doing behind the scenes intel on your data and presenting these analytic reports on, hey, did you know that today X amount of people chatted you or emailed you on this topic, or it took this long to answer emails or chats, or it's just like on the spot operational data that is just phenomenal.
That used to take hours to set up, and
or you got to meet with a BI person and then to do this, and then you go back and forth over definitions, and this is their belief, because anybody excuse me for all of you in the BI world, but you can make a report say whatever you want at the end of the day. But the idea here it is live on the dashboard, and it's just telling you interesting data about, hey, this agent had this many clicks or this many dispositions of this type of questions or this type of scenario, or emails such as with headlines or subject lines as such and such have come across. This is just great data, ultimately to get a better service for not only for your customers, but to have better performance with your agents. So in that respect, I'm excited for what AI and bots have to do. Of course, that all comes at a cost. I'm sure it's very expensive. I know it's very expensive now, or at a higher price point now, but it'll ultimately even out, I think. But I jokingly say, tell Jay that Albert, you kind of hit it as well, as we just may need to go into the hospitality and the food and the manual labor force.
Maybe it's time to pick up a hammer and go learn to be a plumber.
I've done it before. Well, with my side of it, I like Bard more than I like ChatGPT, because it's the live data. You don't have to pay for it. It's connected. And where I found value, my son's in college, my youngest, and he had some friends over, and they were going back and forth on whether you should use AI to write your papers. And I told them, I said, well, you shouldn't use AI to write your papers because one, it's going to be wrong about some things. It's not 100% accurate. I said, but you can use it as a collaborative tool. And I took them back to some of the chats that I've had with Bard between, you know, I like to write stories, and some of it's, you know, plot holes or something like that. And I throw it in there and I say, what's wrong with this? Or the other day I was working on a website and I couldn't get, I don't remember what the problem was. I think it was embedding a video or something. I wasn't familiar with the platform. So I threw it over to Bard and I said, how do I do this? And I said, oh, you can do this exactly. Or if you click this link, it'll take you to the help article. I'm like, why couldn't I find the help article on my own? I think it's a great tool to use as a collaboration. And that's what I was explaining to my son and his friends. Use it to collaborate with you and to improve ideas and to refine what you've done. But don't put a question in and then just copy paste, because it's one, it's not accurate. Two, you're not really learning anything.
You know, Jay, to that point, that, you know, going back to, I'm sorry, Albert, but going to that point, you know, they literally have where on these platforms that I spoke of earlier, as you are responding to an email, it literally is rewriting it for you in a more professional manner or a certain type of tone, if you like, and you can select to choose that. So talk about offshore and being beneficial. It's going to be a huge, huge help. Another thing is the same thing with chat, as it's reading what the client is typing in. It's also offering up some solutions or FAQs or whatever the case may be that may be helpful for your agent to select and respond with. Again, used as tools to help. So again, in that respect, it helps with a better experience, I think. But yeah, you're not going to necessarily need ultimately as many agents to do the job at the end of the day.
Yeah. What were you about to say, Albert?
Oh, I was about to say that speaking of letting AI do everything, you know, we've had some people in Albert's list who've mentioned as a recruiter that they've received ChatGPT written resumes. And so, you know, depending on how much effort you put into that, that could either be a good thing or a bad thing too. So if you let AI write your resume entirely and you don't do any edits or any of that, that could also work against you.
Was that on Albert's list that I saw? Somebody had uploaded their resume. Oh, yeah. And it was
GPT version.
Yeah, resume ChatGPT version 1 or whatever.
Yeah. Version 2. They gave 2 chances.
Why don't you change the name, buddy?
Yeah.
Well, how do people get to you, Albert? How does this happen? To, you know, do I do a search? I mean, if I'm in, what would I do? Walk me through that.
To to find Albert's list.
Right.
Yeah. So go on Facebook, and we have our group is called Albert's Job Listings and Referrals, San Francisco Bay Area, and that should lead you to something. And then if you're also on Eventbrite, we also do a lot of virtual events as well. Just search up Albert's Job Listings and Referrals as well, and you'll be able to find us.
Yep. And I think where I get my joy out of Albert's list is, you know, I've got a few years on a lot of the people that are using it, and I get joy out of when somebody asks a question that I can actually be helpful with. I like providing that advice or that input. And there's been many times when somebody comes around after having this conversation, you know, it's an open conversation with multiple people chiming in, and there's disagreements and agreements, and we go through it. But then when people come back after that and they send a private message and they're like, you know, thanks for that. It helped a lot. You know, can you look at my resume? Can you do those things? And that's what I think is great about what you've built, Albert, is because it really is a community of people that are serving one another I mean, I guess in a way it's sort of self-interest because I enjoy doing that kind of stuff. So I get enjoyment out of it, but
for sure.
But it goes back to that core thing of service.
I mean, yeah, I think that's so key, right? And Albert's list in a lot of other ways is kind of a fulfillment of my favorite Bible verse too, which is Proverbs 11:35, I believe, which is, "The generous man shall be prosperous. He who refreshes others will be refreshed himself," which really just goes back to saying you give back to people and you yourself will feel given back too, because you're able to make somebody else's life a lot better.
And it's funny because you mentioned that, and I was going to bring this up earlier, and we got sidetracked. And I'm not going to say the gentleman's name. It's up to you if you choose to, Albert. But where Albert and I met was actually at a networking group that this other person would host once a month. And Albert was the person that I clicked with the most there. And I think we followed up and had a beer or something later on. But at some point we started talking about that event. And I was like, I felt like it was a show for this guy to be the center of attention. And he didn't give anything of value to anybody else. He wanted everybody to take his card. And I don't remember if he had a book, or he wanted everybody's emails, and he wanted to put you on this list. And it was all about advertising himself. And I walked out of there feeling like I was cheated, because I was told it was going to be a networking group. It wasn't going to be a showcase for this guy to stand up and take up 45% or 95% of the time, and everybody got to network for almost nothing. And when I connected with you and saw that you were doing exactly the opposite, I think that's where we found that we were kindred spirits.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes networking interesting, is that you meet a lot of personalities along the way, and some aren't so great and some are fantastic, and you still know them after 10 years.
Yeah. And that's the joy of networking. And that's really a big part of why Mo and I started this podcast, is we wanted to take some of the cool people, some of the great people, that we've met over the years, such as yourself. And Mo has some people that, business contacts and stuff. He signed up. I'm getting others signed up. And it's so we can, help them promote their businesses. I think Albert froze there for a moment. Help them promote their businesses. And it's more about giving back to the community. And when we were coming up with the idea of this, Mo had mentioned he wanted to be able to take all the experiences that we've had and some of the mistakes that we've made, and over time share them with others, and then put it in a format so people will be able to go back. They'll be able to mine it, get something out of it. And, if we meet some other cool people along the way, that's great. And that's sort of the goal. And when we were talking about that, I told him, Albert, that, I felt that you were probably the ideal person to have as our very first guest, because of the way you started your company, and you showed that by serving others, you can, make a business out of that.
Oh, yeah. And it's a pleasure to be here. Congratulations on your launch.
Yeah. And as promised, I think we're going to wrap this up a little earlier than what we normally would. But in case those of you that couldn't tell, Albert's a little bit under the weather, and he said he would push through for the evening, since we already had it planned, which we truly appreciate that you were able to do.
Thank you, Albert. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
And looking forward to having more meetings with you, Albert, and more podcast recordings. So I'm sure we'll have several more topics to bounce ideas off with you.
Mo and I will hop a plane and come out, and we'll do a brain trust out at where's the place that's outside the city?
Oh, yeah, in Paso Robles here. Yeah.
There you go.
On an acre of land around me here. It's pretty fantastic.
So although we'll come out there,
and bigger in Texas, right? So we got to come visit you, Jay.
Well, you're more than welcome. We have a couple extra bedrooms here, so. but the wine's not nearly as good as it is up there.
Yeah.
We got some okay wine, but
yeah, it's definitely a trip living. I live just 3 minutes down from a winery, so that's pretty cool too.
I don't think Mo would complain about that.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right. Well, do you have any parting words of wisdom or anything additional you'd like to share before we wrap this up for the evening, Albert?
I mean, it would just be that, if you give back to other people, you'll get even more back. So practice that in 2024 and you'll benefit.
All right.
Amen, Albert. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Talk soon.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.